All right, and welcome to another episode of Fishing for Answers. Today, we have Wendy Nather with us. Wendy, do you have any interesting stories to share with the audience?
Sorry. Nope. No,
Nope.
I'm just kidding. We're all done now, right?
I love it.
Um,
Okay, podcast is over.
no, I did promise that I would reveal what I actually think about fishing. So, first of all, Joshua, I have to give you kudos for being brave and inviting me on here. So thank you. Um,
Well,
when
thank
I
you.
was a CISO, um, we in at one organization we ran a bunch of security awareness training classes. We had like 25 different classes, and they were not mandatory, so people just showed up if they wanted to. We had a whole bunch of different topics, and we kept track of who showed up. And over time, 25 classes, people showing up, really enjoying it, getting into it, and everything. We decided to do a phishing exercise to see how people would react. So we sent out a phishing message and we tracked who had been at how many of the security awareness training classes and who fell for it and who didn't. And we found that those who went to the classes were more likely to fall for the phishing exercise, the phishing email.
I gotta say that doesn't surprise me.
It doesn't. Okay, because we were just gobsmacked. Yeah.
No, I mean, I've actually met another guy. He did his PhD dissertation on this exact subject, and he found me as a result of his research, and that was his study. So he said, "Okay, we're going to fish users and see who clicks on stuff." And then we're going to run them through security awareness training, and then we're going to fish them again and see what our results are. When they fished them again, they actually clicked on more stuff than when they fished them the first time. I truly I have a lot of theories on why this is, but if we look at security awareness, just going back, it really has only evolved one time. And so, we had the initial once a year, you go sit in a boring class for an hour, you take a test, and you're done for another year.
Yeah.
And then it evolved a little bit back in around 2010, where all of a sudden now we've started to shorten it, anywhere between 3 minutes on the lower end to 15 minutes on the longer end, make it a little bit more frequent, and we added in phishing simulations. But past that, it hasn't evolved a whole lot. And there's a lot of things that I think we do wrong to make it to where our training causes people to turn off. And what the key one is that we make it too complex. And I truly believe that if the complaint training is too complex, the average person is just gonna say, "Up, I don't want to," and they're going to turn off, and whether even if they go through the motions, but they're not going to listen to it. And I feel like that almost makes them less secure than if they just did the training to begin with without that preconceived mentality. Does that make any sense?
It does. And our theory on what happened is the email that we sent said, we need you to help the security team and check your password, click on this link and type in your password and see if it's strong enough. And our theory was that the people who came to the classes enjoyed it so much that they really wanted to help us. And that's why they were more likely to click on the link. And so the question is really, can you devise a phishing training that covers all the eventualities against people who are going to try many different ways of phishing, and you know that better than I do.
Oh, absolutely. I think that that's absolutely a core part of this is that there's a lot of complexities to fishing. It's far more than just throwing a fish out at your people and seeing what they click on. And when we look at what's happening in the wild, they're targeting my finance people with finance specific fish. They're
Yeah, yeah.
targeting my IT people with IT specific fish and my developers with developer specific fish. So I think we have to adapt and we have to have something smart enough to be able to A, do that internally, but B, go through all these different, small subcategories, if you will, of fishing and just test people's risk holistically.
I think so, but and more importantly, wouldn't it be great if we could just design systems better so it doesn't matter if they fall for it? You know, it's because what we're trying to do today, in my opinion, is the equivalent of building a block list for people to say, okay, check for this. We got to stop this. We got to stop this. We got to stop this. And then we're relying on them to remember. And, you know, when my blood sugar gets low and I get cranky, I'm more likely to fall for stuff as a security person. And so trying to enumerate all the badness and protect against all the badness, we know in security that's not the best way to go about these things. And coming up with a baseline that we could whitelist against, you know, or allow list and say, yeah, if unless it's doing this thing, just don't go for it. That's hard too because, you know, people's jobs, the entire internet is here to click on. Why are we telling people not to click on stuff?
I will say though, chicken or the egg, because to me, part of that education and that awareness needs to be developer training too,
Mhm.
to make sure that we are building from the ground up secure systems. Part of that
Yeah,
awareness training
yeah.
should include not just developer, but what about your IT staff? What about your network engineers? What about even your defenders? To me, each and every one of those groups needs different levels of training. For your defenders, I think they should be learning about continuously about the MITRE ATT&CK framework. For your, your developers, it's OWASP top 10. And so I don't know. I think that's one of those elements that helps us build more securely in a mature awareness program.
I think so too. And it's another thing I did was I used Microsoft's Elevation of Privilege card game, which Adam Shostak developed,
I have that
and
sitting at somewhere at home, but I've never played it.
it's great. You know, it's got, you know, cards with all sorts of different abuse cases, exploitation, and everything. And I invited a bunch of developers after work, and I said, "I'll provide the munchies. You bring your own drinks, and we're gonna play this." And bring your application, the one that you work on. And so for each scenario where you know there was an abuse case, an attack case, you had to try to figure out whether it could apply to your application. And if
Okay.
it could, then you know you would get you know you'd have to raise your hand and say so, and you know everything. So the good thing was each of the developers brought their own application, and they, you know, discovered things that they should go back and fix. So, if from one sense they
Cool.
won, the bad sense was they had to create a whole bunch of new Jira tickets. And so we were like, "Oh man, I'm so sorry, dude." But you know
But if
that's
they don't have the answers, okay, this could apply, but I've done this,
yeah.
this, and this to, mitigate it, then yeah, that's awesome. And they're finding their own. I love it.
And it was fun. You know, we like they won, but they also lost, and we were all commiserating together on it instead of, "Oh, I got you. You missed a spot," which is I hate that sort of behavior, and that's the easiest thing to do. You know, attacking is easy, defending is hard.
I just gotta say, I'm gonna give you credit, but I am going to shamelessly steal that idea and use it because I love the idea of bringing them in and playing that game. I think it's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It's social engineering. You know, you do whatever you can.
and when you get them to, tell you,
Yeah.
they believe it more too. And I think that's really
Exactly.
critical.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, I think you can also use the same thing. It's sort of to what we were talking about before we began about getting the cybersecurity people to admit that they've fallen for a few of these things,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
Because it when that gets out there and the non-cyber people realize, hey, it can happen to any one of us. It works better because as people are more likely to believe negative about you than they are positive. And so when you start with that negative, they're more likely to believe everything that comes after it too.
Oh, that's a really good principle. I didn't know that.
Oh
Start
yeah.
start with something negative that they'll absolutely believe, and then they'll believe the rest. Wow, that's another really good thing to know.
So that actually does bring me to another point around. I think we need more behavioral science in cybersecurity.
Mhm.
Um, Neither of us have really had much of a chance to go into our backgrounds a whole lot, but a little bit about my background was that I started out in ethical hacking saying I'm going to be the most technical hacker ever. And I did a lot of application security, was very good at it. But also, my very first physical assessment, I talked my way into a bank vault and realized, hey, I like this social engineering thing. I went to school for marketing, which plays in because that's sort of an offensive form of psychology in and of
Mhm.
itself. And so now, you flash forward a few years, and I've got the opportunity to work with some professors from around the globe to help write college coursework on how we do this, build effective security awareness programs. It was actually led by a professor out of Plymouth University in the UK. So I bring that up because one of the core principles that I've focused in on that I think applies to phishing specifically is identical elements theory. And identical elements theory talks about how when you get a new car, you'll start seeing it all over the road,
Mhm.
or a different example of you learn about something new and then you see it everywhere, or you start hearing everybody talk about it as you like flip through reels or whatever, right? That is identical elements theory in action. You've learned about something well, so you see it everywhere.
Mhm.
So and that's your subconscious that makes sure that you see it everywhere. And so if we can train you really well about a few key identifiers, it's only like 10 different core identifiers about phishing, then you're going to start to see it everywhere. It's not just going to be in that specific email, but it's going to be on your phone and calls and social media everywhere. And so I think we have to focus more on what human virus definitions do we want to implant by running this phishing simulation, and how are we going to achieve that? And I think that has to be asked before we ever go into the phishing simulations, because we do run the risk of causing disruption, hurting, well, I would say hurting our employees, at least, their emotions anyway, they're feeling.
Yeah.
And there's this one story that's always stood out to me about this older lady who gets phished, saying she's getting a raise, and instead she's in trouble with her boss, and just the emotional roller coaster that comes with that, and how we don't want to do that to our employees.
Yeah, we don't wanna do that, and eh, the other thing that really bugs me is that, even if we create those virus definitions as you describe them, and things like, they're likely to send you a notification that something good's gonna happen, just click on this to see what it is. Um, Even if you do that, I have been in organizations where they have trained very diligently people not to fall for that. And then the HR department sends out an email saying, your bonus notification is ready. Click here. And it's absolutely legit. And it's like, did they not do the training? What makes them think that was a good idea?
So I have a funny story of that. A Fortune 500 client of ours, they decide to send a Starbucks gift card to people, and we
Mhm.
have, thoroughly beat up their employees with the Starbucks gift card thing. No one clicks on it, or I mean, almost no one clicks on
Well,
it.
that's good.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, no, the CEO had to personally send it out and say, no, this is from us. You're only going to get it on this day. But, to that regard, it is funny how our own practices can make us vulnerable. And
Mhm.
I think that's a great segue to, you know, I feel like we need to be more extroverted in cybersecurity. It's a lot of introverts, but I think it's important
Oh,
to get out there and have conversations with people, because
uh-huh.
that's how we learn about these things and prevent them from happening. I, I'm sure you have some thoughts about that.
Well, as an introvert myself, I'm not that happy about that idea, but, I
I'm an
have
introvert too. I just see the need.
yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and having that sort of discussion with everybody, um, is really important. You can be sitting next to somebody on a bus and start talking with them about those sort of security principles, and you'll find that they understand and they have thoughts about, how people get tricked, what sort of things are bad design in tech that they wish they would fix. My kids have been through all sorts of tech starting when they were young before they could even read, and you will have discussions at the appropriate level, like, oh honey, you gave your gaming password to the friend and they spent all of your hard-earned money in the game. Maybe don't do that next time.
Yeah. We work a little bit with cyber.org, and they get training in, they're, I guess, funded by CISA, but they help get training in front of K through 12 students. And they start as early as second grade. And that's the type of stuff they're training about. Who are you going to meet online? And the reality is that it's different scams, but they are
Mhm.
absolutely targeted by scams from the youngest of ages nowadays. And I think we need to do more to get that training and start embedding those principles so that by the time somebody's graduating from high school, it's the same as looking both ways before they cross the street.
It is, and actually that conditioning can start with their very first exposure to tech. My
Mhm.
oldest, like I mentioned, before they could read, we'd put them in front of a computer and they'd play a browser-based game. And one day we walked in to find them in the middle of downloading some kind of browser plugin, and they were sitting in front of it. And what I figure must have happened is, over time they learned that if a pop-up came on the screen, there were usually two little rectangles. One of them was outlined darker than the other. That was the default. And they figured out if they clicked on that one, it would make the pop-up go away and they could get back to their game. So that worked fine until the point when they were clicking on something that was trying to download a plugin, and they got to the EULA and there was no outline default. It was either accept or decline, and they didn't know which one to pick. And that's where we came in and discovered them. So they had already figured out how the interface worked, what they needed to do, what they needed to click on, without any involvement from us, or, again, without even the ability to read. We're all being conditioned like this.
My takeaway is we're conditioning them from before the time they can read to click through those security warnings.
Right, to
That's,
solve their problem,
wow, I
click
hadn't even
here,
thought about
click on
that.
the default. This is what you do.
Okay, I don't know. Maybe we are doomed. No, I joke. I truly don't believe that. Well, so one of the things we were talking about before we got started was role-based training.
Mhm.
Um, I'll open it up to you, leave it just wide open. Do you have any thoughts on role-based training? I know it's a really complex thing, and everyone has sort of a different opinion of how to go about it. So, what are your thoughts?
I'm really in favor of it. I had done some research together with the Scientia Institute on security outcomes, on what sort of outcomes are you statistically likely to see based on certain practices. And one of them was role-based training. And those organizations that said that they did that tended to have more success in getting certain outcomes. And it makes a lot of sense. If you can go to somebody and say, look, here are the sort of things that we care about in security. Here's what you're likely to see. Here are the sort of decisions that we're going to trust you to make. And we would really appreciate it if you come to us. If you see anything that looks funny from your perspective, this is going to be really helpful. I can tell you, as a former CISO, there was nothing better than having somebody come into my office and close the door and say, I think there's something you should know, because that's a lot of cases how those breaches start.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And there's so many of those business processes that are every day used against us. And so the more that we can have those conversations and customize training to that individual to make sure that they're prepared for those types of attacks, the better. And so to that point, one of the side subjects of role-based training or sub titles, if you will. I don't know what's the term I'm looking for, but anyway, uh, what about role based phishing? I think that that's something we need to be doing more and more because I see it every day from the bad guys.
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, and that comes under the category of here are the things you're likely to see, and we will say, by the way, they may try to make it look like something you would respond to. And so we just add that in there, and yes, especially with the automation that comes with AI and everything else, it's a lot easier to customize these sort of things, to do your research on the sort of people you want to target. And this is why I always say to administrative assistants, you're probably the most powerful person in this organization,
Who I
because
always target.
you know what is going on. You have the power to do these things on behalf of other people, and people are going to come to you instead of to the person you represent, because they're going to ask you for help, and you're going to want to try to help them. So just be really careful. You have an awesome responsibility with your role.
And if I can get the assistant to trust me,
Mhm.
everybody else in the organization will fall over.
Yeah, yeah.
And abuse of trust. I think all too often we only think about it in terms of ones and zeros, our digital infrastructure, but our human trust relationships can be abused too. And I think it's just as important that we educate our people about that too.
Yeah, and even with the ones and zeros, I mean, trust happens between individuals, not between organizations. And so, anytime you are, I have a friend who is in on the offense side, and not only does he take voice acting lessons, but he also takes improv classes
I
to
like it.
help him with the things that he's going to pretend to do when he is trying to get to somebody.
Oh
So yeah.
yeah. No, I've been there, and I'll tell you, there's nothing like improving when you're trying to not get caught. I have this one of my favorite hacking stories was the time I almost got caught. Because that's the first thing everyone asks you. Well, have you ever gotten caught? And
Mhm.
it's like, well, sort of. Um, but so I had this one time where it was this big law firm, and we called up, and this is within like 15 minutes of starting the assessment, and we had found a help desk phone number. Their help desk guy, he gives us his username, his password, and he's a domain admin. So it's game over. We've got full control of everything, and we just started. Well, they're a very, very large law firm. And so they wanted us to test four different physical locations to see how their security was from both a physical as well as social engineering perspective. And they were most interested in the social engineering aspect. Well, we fail at the first three places, and I'm going to the fourth because we sort of divide and conquer. And I say, well, guys, let's just guarantee this. We have full control of everything. Let's just throw it on somebody's calendar and make sure they're expecting us. And
Mhm.
so, sure enough, they're expecting me. I walk in, and she says, hello. She greets me by whatever alias name I'm going with. Takes me back to their server room, gives me the key, everything. I'm in. It seems like it's perfect. About 5 minutes later, this guy comes over and he says, "Who are you and why are you in my server room?" And it turns out they had this really cool little low cost security mechanism that I haven't seen in many places before or since. And it was just this pinhole camera on the ceiling that would email a picture of anyone that entered to all of IT. I
Mhm.
mean, had not planned on that, didn't text anyone in IT.
Uh-huh.
And so when he walks in, I go to latency. I always went with latency. I don't know, talking about milliseconds just got people to let me do whatever I wanted to do somehow. But I give him my excuse. He goes away. About 5 minutes later, these really, really big buffed guys come back or come and they say, "Sir, come with us." And I realize I am being bounced at this point as I walk into the hallway, it's just lined with people. I mean, both sides of the hallway are full.
Wow.
And word has spread that they caught somebody in their server room and that he's being escorted out right now. And so everyone flocks down. They want to see the drama and the excitement. Well, I have never used my letter of authorization up to this point, and I don't really want to use it that day. And so as I get out into the hallway, I'm like, well, looks like they're looking for a show. Let's give them one.
Oh my God.
And so I just put on this scene. I make an obnoxious scene my whole way out, and I'm able to get out without them ever asking me or trying to detain me. And they actually are a law firm that helps a lot of companies when they have cyber incidents, so they know a thing or two about how to handle this. But I like to tell that story because it's how I discovered what I like to call the denial of thinking attack, and that is if you can entertain somebody enough, they will not think about security.
Well, okay, Joshua, remind me what we're doing right now. Are we being entertaining? Is
I
that
hope so.
is that how we're doing? But no, and you really bring up a good point. That's training phishing response and social engineering response is a really good thing to add to your arsenal. If you train everybody in the building to be comfortable confronting people, it's not just going to help the response in the organization. It's okay if you fall for something. It's how you deal with it and respond to it, and mitigate it afterwards that makes a difference. But that's going to help them in life. Anytime they see something that they think is wrong, even if it has nothing to do with security, going up to somebody and saying, excuse me,
Yeah,
but no. It would be great if we could train more people to do that.
I agree. I do. Well, yeah, no, I completely agree. I just don't know how we ever accomplish that. But I love it aspirationally. Okay, so a couple of actually, let me just leave this more wide open. So, quick question for you. At the beginning, we were talking about, or you shared the story about how you tested it and they actually got worse. So, how do you think we make training more effective with our programs? We've touched a little bit on role based, but you must have some other ideas or things you've learned over the years.
Oh, this is tricky because, my reflex is to say, why are we training them? Why are we making this dynamic attack surface of people, of individuals who come in and out all the time, who all have different wetware, all have different circumstances, it's all inconsistent. Why are we relying on them to be our main control, our main defense against this sort of attack? And so from that perspective, I'd say we can try to improve it as much as we possibly can, but I can't help thinking that, maybe we're fundamentally going in the wrong direction. I mean, I tease my red team people. I say, if, social engineering is not getting somebody, 1,000 people to click on a link. That's easy. Getting 1,000 people not to click on a link, that is hard. And even harder is to redesign your entire system so it doesn't matter whether they click on the links or not.
So I do agree that security is all about layers and training is only one layer. And if you're relying completely on training or completely on your EDR or completely on anything,
Mhm.
um, you can count your days until you end up having a ransomware attack. And so it is very critical that we have all of those different layers. To me, I think it's that we want to prevent as many clicks as we can, but it's not just about those clicks. When I think of training, I think we want to, yes, stop those clicks, but we also want to increase reporting and make sure that people are reporting as high of a percentage as possible of the phishing simulations, because that tells us how much they're reporting of the actual fish. So we want to see that number be as high as possible. We want to reduce click rates as low as possible, so we have less to deal with. But I think the other element is just we want our developers to write more secure code. We want our IT teams to be aware of those mistakes that lead to utter compromise. Because when I was a hacker, I think way too much emphasis gets put on the end user.
Mhm.
Yeah, sure, we got in because of mistakes by the end user, but the reason we got access to everything was because of mistakes by IT.
Yes.
And it's so critical that we train IT about those mistakes to make sure we're hardening those systems, because I can't tell you how many times we took those mistakes and it got us around all the other security controls because of one mistake that an admin made.
Yes, exactly. And so I hate it when people say, you know, users are the weakest link. No, I
I
think
hate
users
that one.
are, yeah, I think users are our biggest asset if we treat them that way. And so, you know, for improving that sort of awareness training, like we were talking about before. Oh, that see, you already have a slide. That's
I
great.
do, I do.
You know, work on incentivizing the behaviors that we want to see, and that includes response and recovery, not just prevention.
I agree.
We want people to feel comfortable. You know, we want it to be a safe space where they can admit to having made a mistake, where we reward them for reporting things, we celebrate things, and we say, you know, this happened, but we recovered with the help of these people and these people, and encouraging everybody to um, to embrace it as some not their problem to solve, but as something that they contribute to helping with. And another great thing is, you know, to have discussions with people and say, if you were going to trick somebody, how would you do it? And let them come up with it, because then they, yeah, this is the theme that you and I are running into over and over again, that if they come up with it, they're more likely to believe it, they're more likely to own it, and it also triggers a wider oh, there you go. Why am I even here, Joshua? You've got all this nailed down.
No, I absolutely love it, and I actually think that that's a really great segue to um, driving engagement.
Mhm.
I feel like so often it's hard, and one of the problems is that for the longest time, cybersecurity teams have only ever told people when they do horrible.
Yeah.
We don't tell them when they do a great job. And you said we need to praise them earlier. And I think that, that's such a critical element in driving engagement is praising them. But to that, I mean, I think there's other ways to drive better engagement too. Starting with one of them being just shorter, more micro training that really does adapt to the user's more shrinking attention span and our social media lifestyles. But the other one I think that can help is gamification. What are your thoughts on either one or both of those subjects?
Gamification is fine, except in my experience, it is often designed and purchased by people who uh, don't have the right perspective from the end user side. And, you know, like I've seen too many bad examples of gamification where it was like, you know, how do you do, fellow kids, where they're trying to be cool and the person sitting there is just rolling their eyes, and pretty soon they get to, okay, how can I just cheat and get through this as fast as possible? So it's training them to do things that you didn't expect.
Almost too juvenile, like, hey, here's a gold sticker.
Yeah, yeah, all that kind of stuff. And, oh, can you do this cool thing? It's like, no, I do not care about this.
One area I think we can use gamification is around phishing. I've heard debate about whether or not we should tell people that we're going to phish them. I think there should be no debate. We should always tell people we're going to phish them ahead of time uh, because we can make a game out of it.
Mhm.
And when we make a game out of it, we potentially take that negative situation that I talked about at the beginning, where that person that thinks they're getting a raise and instead they get in trouble, and we de-weaponize it. But I also think we can make a game of cat and mouse out of phishing and just make it a little bit of a competition or a challenge for the user without making it so juvenile, if you will.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, well, all the people I know who love a good football game and love just teasing each other. I'm not a sports ball person.
Me
I never have been, but a friend of mine dragged me to watch a game, you know, at a bar just last weekend because it was my alma mater versus a team that he liked, and he wanted a chance to give me a hard time about it. That's
But
all
you
he
didn't
wanted.
care.
And we ended up not even watching the game. You know, it was later we looked at the score. So yeah, if you can make it that much fun for people who enjoy competition, not everybody does, but if you're going to enjoy competition, let it be the sort that they like and not, hey, we're all going to play this corporate game, because in my experience that doesn't necessarily work.
Oh, I agree. And I think, the other thing is keep it positive.
Mhm.
Don't do a wall of shame. Do
No, no,
a leaderboard. That's, praise the people at the top, not the people, shame the people at the bottom. And I think
absolutely.
that's what we want to do, because that way they strive. They want to be at the top, versus, just making it a negative experience. But I think that really goes back to the whole carrot or stick thing that we were.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, yeah, no. So I got to officially ask the question: carrot or stick?
I'm going to say yes to that. See, I reject the rules of your game. I try to use carrots wherever I can. Will resort to a stick when I need to. But again, it's about having respect for the people that you work with and having respect for the fact that you're trying to implement something that they don't want, need, or care about. And, that's interrupting their day and getting in the way of something that they're actually trying to do. So you got to cut them a lot of slack.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I will bring carrots, every day of the week, understanding that carrots are going to look different for different people. I think that's the other important thing about training, is that people learn differently, they have different priorities, they come from different situations, and trying to adapt to what is going to work for them and is going to annoy them the least, I think is a really worthwhile thing to try.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And I think a carrot is simply annoying them less too. Hey,
Mhm,
you did
yeah.
good, so I'm gonna.
I know you're annoyed. You
I,
didn't really want this carrot. I'm gonna give you this carrot anyway because I appreciate you. It'll help some,
yeah.
acknowledging that.
And I think praise is a great carrot. It's
Mhm.
so underrated. Just saying, hey, great job when they
Yeah.
don't click or when they report.
Mhm.
Any opportunity to praise users to me is one of the most effective carrots that we'll ever have. And it builds their confidence. Um, One of the behavioral science principles that I've sort of focused in on as being very applicable to cybersecurity, and in particular phishing and security awareness, is called learned helplessness.
Mm.
And it's interesting because there is this group of people that will come into your security training program very proud of their ability to spot a scam. But if and I've seen this happen where if you trick them too much,
Mhm.
use too much inside information and just, whatever, you get them to click, 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 they can actually develop this sense of learned
They're
helplessness.
gonna give up. They're gonna say, "Well,
Yes.
what's the point?"
Apparently I'm not as good as I thought I was.
Yeah.
And as soon as they accept that, just even from a subconscious perspective, their attitude changes and they will become less secure.
Yeah, yeah, that is so important. And again, it makes such a difference if you enlist somebody and say, "Look, I respect what you bring to this organization, and I
Mhm.
need your help." That makes such a difference than, kind of staying at a remove from people and, doing this mechanistic sort of routine and again, playing gotcha when you don't need to play gotcha. I think there's so many different ways to redesign that.
And I know it's hard to believe for most of my coworkers, but uh, there are other intelligent people inside the organization other than just cybersecurity. I'm
Oh my
joking.
goodness. Oh my goodness. That's gonna be the headline of this episode. I just
You
know.
probably will. I'll get in trouble. I'm going to get
There
canceled.
are other smart people in the room. Yeah.
Um, so I agree. I think carrot whenever we can. Actually, just yesterday, I got an opportunity to interview with this reporter from the Morning Brew, and it was exactly about this. Like, when is it okay to use punishment, and how much punishment should we be using with repeat offenders?
Mhm.
As opposed to me telling you what I told the reporter, what's your answer to that?
Oh gosh. I think anytime you have to reach for the stick, you've lost to a large extent. Especially since what you're ultimately doing is you're serving the business needs, and if the business doesn't want to punish that person, why is security trying to do it? That's my opinion.
Oh, I agree. My answer was actually, my job is to communicate risk, and if that person truly deserves to be fired, there's going to be other reasons. And
Oh, good point. Yeah.
and the only people that I would ever really want to fire aren't the people that are having a hard time but trying. They're the
Mhm.
people that don't care, and the people that don't care, there's other problems for sure.
Yes, good point. Excellent point.
um, this has been absolutely amazing. We are running a little bit low on time. And one of the segments that I like to have is just to really make it free form. I
Mhm.
know that the longer I stay in this industry, the more pet peeves I develop. Like my biggest one is you can't patch stupid. I hate
Mhm.
that phrase because
Mhm. Agreed.
for so many reasons, I won't even go into them. But what pet peeves do you have that maybe you can share with people that are, trying to develop some pet peeves? Because I've had guests that didn't have pet peeves, and I feel like you have to after a little while in this industry.
I was gonna say, wait, how much time do we have? 'Cause
Right?
I have a lot of them. I already named a few, and I agree. You can't patch stupid is like, no, you can't patch bad design.
Yeah, and that's
That's
true.
that's where we should be turning around. Yeah, I mean, I'll just leave you with one. One of the biggest problems that I've had with the security industry, somebody asked me once if I could go back in time and change something about how we do security. I said, I would have done away with the person who invented antivirus, because here you discovered a vulnerability in an application and they said, well, instead of actually just fixing the problem, why don't we slap something on top of it to try to protect it? And now we have a billion-dollar industry with security spackle. Everybody's just slapping things on top of other things, and everybody
Mhm.
wants to be the top layer. And as an industry analyst, I saw nothing but that. And by the time we got to the sort of product that my colleague Adrian Sanabria called a SIM for your SIM, I said, okay, that's it. I'm out.
Wait,
I'm
wait,
out. I'm
what?
done.
I didn't even hear about the sim for your sim.
Yeah, that's what it was another layer of analytics, that filled in what a sim could not do. And okay, but the thing is, yeah, a sim for your sim. Are okay. We're getting a little bit ridiculous now.
So I'm guessing that goes to what you talked about at B-Sides New York a little bit, which
Mm.
was, and I'm probably saying this wrong, but what largely around what we're wasting our time on in cybersecurity.
No, really that, we're trying a lot of things. Why are we working so hard? Why is it still so hard and it's not getting any easier? Well, maybe there are things we are going about the wrong way. And so I list a few things. We need to rethink these assumptions, and anybody can do it. You can go, I've been doing this for 20 years and we're still trying to solve this the same way. Isn't it time to rethink this?
Yeah.
So I was trying to get people to question everything, including me. I said, okay, stop listening to the boomer, because chances are I might have created some of these problems that we're dealing with now, or my cohort did. So it's really up to people who can think differently, and that's why we need everybody in this industry.
I do like that, and honestly, that's where Fish Firewall came from, was trying to ask, what are we doing wrong and how can we fix it, because it's not working. And
Yeah.
that was something that was really, really stood out to me. Was just, I would go in, most of the penetration testing and red team work that me and my teams did was largely driven by compliance, and the problem with that was, we'd go in year after year. We'd issue the same report year after year.
Yeah.
Nothing would change. I tailgated off the same guy one time 4 years in a row.
Oh my gosh.
And once I got done high fiving everybody and laughing about it, it actually sort of really made me upset and a little bit sad that
Well, yeah,
we could
yeah.
put this in the report year after year and it would never make it to that person.
Yeah, yeah, and that's yeah, so we've gotta keep questioning everything, that's part of the learning process.
I couldn't agree more, and truly everything, and we got to apply it to some, higher standards because I feel like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors, if you will. There's a lot of products out there that would just have you look at metrics that don't mean anything,
Right.
and I think we have to know what our metrics are and apply all of our vendors to that.
Yeah, yeah, agreed. There's still so much to do, gosh, I guess
There
we
is.
better get back to it.
We're just gonna have to go work harder.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Don't hang up just yet. But for those of you listening in, I'm going to have to end. Thank you for joining us. It's been a pleasure and have a great day.